Hello, spooky friends. Welcome to the third installment of 1970s horror television, Ranked. I'll link the previous installments in the description. I know I included a disaster movie in the 1971 ranking, but I'm cutting them from now on. They're a genre all their own, and I don't want these videos to swell to feature length. Let's get started.
Now read all of
I talked about this movie quite a bit in my video on Dan Curtis, but here's a recap. The Night Stalker was hugely successful, not to mention groundbreaking. It spawned a sequel and a series, and all of it is beloved by horror fans. Darren McGavin plays Carl Kolchak, a reporter who will go to any lengths to get his story, and in this case, the story appears to be a vampire prowling the streets of Las Vegas. The movie brings classic monsters into the modern age in a frighteningly realistic manner. It's iconic, and I love it, and if I didn't put it in S tier, I would likely be pilloried. If Women in Chains is the kind of thing you like, then you may like this. I did not. Lois Nettleton plays Sandra Parker, a parole officer who has a charge die by the hands of a brutal prison guard, Tyson, played by Ida Lupino. She decides to go undercover in the prison to expose her. Now, firstly, she's a state parole officer handling dozens of cases and would absolutely be recognized by a third of the prison, and the entire prison would know within 24 hours. Secondly, she tells exactly one person what she's doing, a friend who helps her pull it off. She doesn't tell her supervisor. She has one lifeline, and guess what happens to that lifeline? This kind of ridiculousness had me throwing popcorn at the TV, which was a bummer because I had to clean it up later. But I will bend slightly to popular opinion. People love this film because Ida Lupino is returning to this genre after 1955's Women's Prison. For those fans, I will bump this up to a D. She Waits features Patty Duke and David McCallum as Laura and Mark Wilson. They are newlyweds coming home so Laura can meet Mark's mother, Sarah, played by Dorothy McGuire. Sarah has lately been having visitations from Mark's late wife, Elaine. She believes Elaine means them harm and urges Mark and Laura to leave. Apparently, Elaine deleted herself after a row with Mark. Or did she? Maybe Mark killed her. Why else would she want revenge? This has all the elements of a good ghost story. Great house, past tragedy, the works, but it's so slow. It's almost a bottle production with the cast stuck in the house. It had great potential, but didn't meet it. Afraid it's going in the D tier. The Screaming Woman features the incomparable Olivia de Havilland as Laura Wynant, a wealthy woman only recently released from an institution following the stress of her husband's death. On her first day out, she takes her horse trap on a ride along her property. At the site of her ruined smokehouse, she sees a little dog digging. Then she hears a faint cry for help coming from the ground. Loosely based on a Ray Bradbury story, this was a miserable movie. Not because it's bad, it's actually quite good. It just contains some of my least favorite things, being buried alive and a woman being treated as hysterical and helpless. Laura desperately looks for aid for the buried woman, but she is believed by no one. De Havilland is great at playing women with tremendous will, and this is no exception. The tension is relentless, the performances are great, and the writing is excellent, as is John Williams' last television score before he got all high and mighty. I'm putting this in the A tier. Another early Steven Spielberg film, Something Evil, is proof he didn't always hit it out of the park. He directed this right on the heels of the excellent Duel, so it's rather a letdown. Marjorie, played by Sandy Dennis, and Paul, played by Darren McGavin, move to a bucolic farmhouse. The character has some odd ideas about demons and such, as do some of the neighbors, but it's not a folk horror vibe. Spielberg does his best, creating tension and using interesting techniques to shoot this clunker, but in the end, the script is a chaotic, loud mess. Random bad things happen. Apparently it's the kid, though we are given no clue of that previously. There's no story here, just devils. It was rather like being hit repeatedly over the head with a stylish bat. Something Evil gets an F. When Michael Calls is a little confusing at first because of poor casting, so let me explain. About 15 years ago, Helen, played by Elizabeth Ashley, had to take in two young nephews, Michael and Craig, because her sister went insane. Soon after, Michael, who was about 7, runs away and dies of exposure. Now the confusing part is that the adult Craig is played by Michael Douglas, who is only 5 years younger than Ashley. She was a 33-year-old cast to be a 40-something. Mistakes like that can throw off a whole story for me, but despite that, When Michael Calls is very watchable. As you might guess from the title, dead little Michael begins calling his Auntie My Helen, and the calls are wonderfully creepy. At first he's just alone and scared. Then he realizes he's dead. Then the threats begin and the bodies start to fall. Ben Gazzara is the ex-husband who is supposed to be charming. These days, if a man shows up out of the blue violating his custody agreement, he's a murdering lunatic by the end of the film. In 1972, it's, oh gosh, he just loves his daughter so much. Michael Douglas is always great to watch, even if you think he's Helen's new boyfriend at first. It has creepy moments, but it's predictable, and the child performances are why I don't like child performances. I'll put it in the B tier. While I was watching The Eyes of Charles Sand, I thought it felt like a pilot, and indeed it was, but it went no further. Charles, played by Peter Haskell, awakes from a bad dream to discover his uncle has died, leaving him the sight, and a really cool book that I want to duplicate as a prop. Now he has visions, and people in need are drawn to him. This was pretty predictable, but there were cool scary bits, and the final Killer Goes Mad performance is truly a ride. The primary problem is that Charles's visions don't actually give him useful information. They just appear for jump scares and to show off some wildly terrible makeup. The cast is fun to watch. I love Joan Bennett, here fresh from Dark Shadows. Post-Batman Adam West plays a suave psychiatrist. The idea is great, but the writing let it down, leaving the movie in the C tier. Oh, sorry, I dozed off watching The Woman Hunter. The most interesting part of this movie is Stuart Whitman driving around a Volkswagen Thing. There's a killer hunting rich women and spifflicating them for their jewelry. Barbara Eden plays Dina, who is recovering from a car accident and is taking a vacation at her Mexican villa with her husband Jerry, played by Robert Vaughn. A mysterious stranger, Paul, played by Stuart Whitman, maneuvers his way into her life, and she begins to suspect him of nefarious deeds. The plot relies on misogyny. Not only is Eden's character written to be almost smart, but not quite, the men around her all, naturally, believe her cheese is done slipped off her cracker. It's tiresome, and it gets a big ol' F. Haunts of the Very Rich is a strange little film. It looks like Fantasy Island. It is cast like Fantasy Island, with Lloyd Bridges, Anne Francis, Cloris Leachman, and more. But boy, is it ever not Fantasy Island. A group of strangers are on a plane going to an unknown destination. Each received a brochure tailored to their tastes, except for poor Ed Asner, who just thinks he's on the wrong flight. Soon, they land in a tropical paradise. Every guest has a room that fills their wishes or expectations. It looks like a wonderful vacation for all. Well, except Ed Asner. The first hint of trouble is a snake in the bed of the honeymooners. Next, there's a storm that knocks out power. The staff abandons the group. Soon, they begin to question the nature of their reality. There's plenty of atmospheric dread amongst the 70s grooviness. Dominic Frontieri soaks the entire film in lounge music, which is surprisingly creepy. It's filmed in Viscaya, an old Italianate resort in Miami, and the setting is almost another character. There's a lot to work with, and they use it well. It's between a B and a C, so I'll give it a B. I am not deeply familiar with the Louisiana accent, but I think the actors in Moon of the Wolf were doing their best. Everyone here seemed to do the best they could with what they had. The movie stars David Jansen, who was in fact my first cousin once removed, as Sheriff Aaron Whitaker. When a woman's body is found mauled in the swamp, at first wild dogs are blamed. But an autopsy shows a powerful blow occurred prior to the animal damage. The victim's father, Hugh, has been bedbound for some time, and now he's raving in Creole about a loup-garou, but no one understands the word. The first 45 minutes of the movie is a good mystery setup, and it hooks you in. Bradford Dillman plays Andrew Rodanth, a member of the town's founding family. He always does well with a touch of arrogance. His sister, Louise, is played by Barbara Rush, who is much more welcoming and down-to-earth than her brother. It doesn't take long to figure out who the bad guy is, though the word werewolf isn't spoken until nearly an hour in. After that, things fall apart a bit. Up to this point, it's been an interesting set of characters and an interesting plot. Then, a frankly silly werewolf starts tearing things up. All is not lost. There's some twists in the lore, and the hero is not necessarily who you think it will be. I'll say I enjoyed most of the movie, and I have never seen such a well-groomed werewolf. It's a solid C+. This movie is why I'm very suspicious of good reviews on IMDb. In The Victim, Catherine, played by Elizabeth Montgomery, fresh from Bewitched, comes to visit her sister, who is going through a divorce. But her sister is nowhere to be found when she arrives. From there, very little happens. She calls for her sister a lot. The logic dictates that if she could answer, she certainly would. In fact, she's in a basket in the basement for much of the movie, and Catherine just misses her when she's down there. We expect tension, but never really get it. We meet the killer, but nothing really happens. And then it just ends, abruptly. The best thing I can say about this movie is the cat, the dog, and the bird all make it through unscathed. It goes on the D tier. I hate lengthy spoken prologues. I think it's a sign of weak writing. Nonetheless, the prologue in Gargoyles actually did give necessary information, and by the end it had the mood going. Gargoyles are hatching again after 600 years, and a few corpses have gone astray. After all, they don't know about trucks. One body has fallen into the hands of a demonology professor, played by Cornell Wilde, and he wants to keep it. The Gargoyles get it back, and they take his daughter Diana, played by Jennifer Salt, as well. There are some great faces in this: Jennifer Salt, Scott Glenn, Grayson Hall, and Bernie Casey as the Gargoyle. Another big plus: this is Stan Winston's first film as a makeup effects artist, and he shared a Primetime Emmy for it. Unfortunately, it's let down by the writing. The Gargoyle tells Diana that humans have nothing to fear, then tells her father they're going to wipe out the humans and take over. Maybe he's just being diabolical, but this movie could have gone a bit deeper and spent less time on car chases. Nonetheless, I had good fun, and it can flap its little wings to the B tier. I talked about this movie in my video on John Llewellyn Moxie, so allow me to briefly plagiarize myself. 1972's Home for the Holidays has a remarkable cast. Jessica Walter, Sally Field, Eleanor Parker, and Jill Hayworth are the four sisters. Julie Harris is the suspect wife, and Walter Brennan is the dying father, who is apparently kind of a bastard. The father, not Brennan. While you know whodunit pretty much 10 minutes in, just watching these people act is such a joy. Also, Sally Field can really scream. I do wish they'd stop knocking into the Christmas tree, though. Yes, it makes a pretty tinkly sound, but who does that? It's a fun bit of fluff with a great cast. We'll stuff it in the B tier. 1972 had a fantastic start with The Night Stalker, but otherwise there were few standouts. But since I already did a short video on 3 movies from 1973, I know we're in for a treat on the next one. Thank you for watching, spooky friends. I love you to death. Good night.